We don't need the solution. Your solution might be great. There might be a great solution to voter ID if voter fraud was a problem, but it's not a problem. So I don't trust any of the solutions, because any solution, by definition, is a layer of difficulty on top of the right that should be the easiest to exercise.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Before You Speak podcast. I'm your host, Derek Peterson, and we're just processing the fire of my news feed with this guy who's on camera, if you're watching it.
I think I'm on a different side because you left me hanging in the waiting room for like 10 minutes. I feel like normally I'm on the right, now I'm on the left, and I think that's your fault.
I blame Riverside for changing their software update. So, all right.
Well, I am Elwin, and the fire hose of my news feed is being carried around in a diaper bag with Natalie Harp today.
Dude, Ossoff is starting to look like a little bit presidential here. I had seen some clips of him a few months ago where I was like, okay, like I really like this guy. It seems like he's willing to go a step further than some of the other Democratic nominee. Like, you listen to guys like Pete Buttigieg, who still kind of like play politics a little bit softer on dealing with Republicans and corruption. And Ossoff seems to be it feels like he's the right amount of pissed off and good at articulating it. What's your take on it?
Yeah, Ossoff's knives are sharp, man. I love his message, and he's been on it consistently for a long time. He's at the top of my ballot right now when I look at the rest of the field. There's a long way to go, but he's from a red state. At the beginning of this election cycle, I think his seat, because he's running for re-election, his seat was kind of like toss-up, barely tilt D type on the ratings. I think he's ahead quite handily in the polls. And yeah, I mean, the Natalie Harp joke, right? He said this, he gave a speech, and he said something along the lines of, Trump's not interested in running the war. He's not interested in what's going on the aircraft carrier. He's just interested in ballrooms and traveling with Natalie. And all the words I said before traveling with Natalie are irrelevant, because as soon as he said traveling with Natalie, the bat signal went out in Republican conservative pearl clutching circles, and they've just been fucking flipping out for like 4 days about this. Just like, how dare he say that? That's so disrespectful to Natalie Harp. That, this party thinks they're the champions of women, and now he's just saying this stuff about Natalie Harp. And kind of sane people are looking at this going, well, he didn't say anything about Natalie Harp. He said Trump is interested in traveling with Natalie Harp. You can draw your own other conclusions from that all you want, right? And I'm sure Ossoff knew what conclusions might be drawn. But also, aren't you the people who yelled at Kamala Harris for sleeping her way to the top when she was in California? Wasn't that a whole last election story? And also, shouldn't we actually know more about Natalie Harp, who is with the president more than I think any other human on earth all the time, who has like jumped in the trunk of SUVs because she was left out of the motorcade? Who has compared him to like the word of Christ and is standing there next to nuclear football every day. Like, isn't there actually a legitimate interest to be had in who this woman is, what she feels, and what she's doing right next to the president? But nope. Ossoff crushed it because they have just lost their brains on the right, and it's amazing to see.
Man, the fallout from this is also hilarious. Like, listening to all of like the conspiracy theories, potential conspiracy theories. I don't even know if I believe like too many conspiracy theories are turning out to be real to call everything conspiracy theory anymore. But like there was rumors that Melania was pissed off that Natalie Harp is with the president so much, and so that she had kind of a directive to like push out to PR teams to shit on Natalie Harp a little bit. And then the funnier thing about this for me was just that who Natalie Harp is. This was somebody that like was on their list of like a potential threat to the president because she was obsessed with him. And when you see her and her demeanor, she just looks like a stalker. It's like how she speaks, everything is just like she has just pinpointed that this dude is like the center of the world and the meaning of her life. And the crazy thing about it is it's not shocking that Trump would befriend and hire a stalker. Like this is like that relationship dynamic just seems like it all was like a perfect match for a narcissistic, egotistical maniac.
Also, who does Natalie Harp kind of look like?
That's a fair point.
Ivanka kind of looks like his daughter.
I was going for Ivanka. I was like, yeah, that's a
Yeah, it's like, and you know, the whole thing is
it's just
sick,
uncomfortable,
twisted, hilarious. It's just incredible. You know, she may or may not be carrying a diaper bag around with her. Who knows? You know, like whatever, anything's possible at this point. But yeah, Ossoff, what a grand slam he hit there. And I'm sure it was like a throwaway line in the speech. And he woke up the next day and was like, oh,
that
sweet. Yeah,
that's funny. Who do you think who's his running mate if he runs in 28?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's actually
you already
really
shot
difficult.
down my you already shot down my AOC,
AOC
comment.
Well, I don't think AOC wants to do it. You know,
yeah, and I think you're right, because she wouldn't be effective as a vice president. She wouldn't have the opportunity to do. She is an active politician. She actually wants change, not just the status. Which, after you said that, I was like, yeah, that tracks. I could see that.
Yeah, and I think she wants to be a senator, and she'll run in 2028 for Schumer's seat. But I think it's actually a great question because I don't think that we can answer that question until after this year's elections, because we'll know a decent amount about how DSA politicians play in Michigan, in Florida, in some of these races where they've won primaries. You know, if El Sayed beats Mike Rogers handily, let's say he wins like 53-47, you know, then okay, that indicates a certain willingness in a purple state to vote for those policies. If he loses, and you know, the woman in Florida we'll get to, she will almost definitely lose, then you might have this kind of, all right, the DSA candidates work in some places, but we definitely cannot run them on a national ticket.
That makes sense. Yeah. The oddly enough, have you listened to Tallarico speak recently at all?
No.
I don't know if he is just doing a bunch of research on Barack Obama or if somebody is coaching him, but his cadence so often starts to sound so Barack Obama. I'm like, somebody is teaching him like how he like, I'm not saying like he's Barack Obama-esque, and I don't want people to mistake that. I'm saying that I think he's literally taking the cadence of how he says words and applying it, because there was two clips that I saw recently, and I'm like, dude, if that was somebody doing a Barack Obama impersonation, I would be like, all they do is need to like alter the voice a little bit and you're there. So I'm like, I think somebody's coaching him to do it. So we'll see.
I love that manner of speaking, you know, where it's kind of, you can tell someone is paying attention to the words that they're using, which I think I happen to love that. Like, that's right up my alley, because it does two things for me. One, it shows me that they're thinking about what they're saying, and two, it adds a layer of accountability to the words that they ultimately choose. They chose those words for a reason, and we can now hold them to account based on that choice, rather than someone who's kind of flying off the cuff and is later like, well, that's not really what I meant. I picked the wrong word. Like, no, there's a measured thoughtfulness behind it, where it's like, okay, that word was chosen for a very specific reason. And, my whole family knows, like, my favorite thing to say is words have meanings. So when people speak as though they believe that, I'm in.
It's weird that you decided to do a podcast with me then. So the guy that verbally processes everything. So, half of the stuff that comes out of my mouth has not actually fully been formed in thought for originally. So I have
I
to
also
be
enjoy
very
half-baked cookies.
They are sometimes the gooey middle.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Sometimes it's delicious. Well, so I had a theory before that I posted on Threads that all of this Big Ben stuff going on in Texas was another level of corruption for Trump and his cronies. Because the guy whose construction company got the $1.5 billion no big contract to build the border wall through Big Bend National Park. When they started rolling out a bunch of the tractors and stuff, the videos were really weird. They weren't doing much other than just like tearing down some random trees. So I'm kind of watching these videos. I'm like, man, something feels a little weird about this. And then I'm like, man, this kind of feels like one of those things where they knew people were going to lose their damn minds over all of this and then shut it down. And then nobody's going to talk about where the money from that contract went after the fact. So, like, I personally just think that this was just a giant, hey, we can do this thing. Maybe Greg Abbott steps in and stops it. He looks like a hero for doing it. And this guy gets a bunch of money and nobody ever thinks about it again. So this guy who also happened to donate like I think 10 million to Trump's campaigns over the course of the last 2 election cycles. So, 10 million gets you a $1.5 billion turnaround. It's a good investment.
It's a hell of a return. Yeah, I can't say no. Right? Yeah. I want enough money to not be able to go to jail ever.
Me too.
No, I can't say no, because the videos, like there's like 1 or 2 videos of one machine pushing over some bushes and everybody freaked out. Have you ever been to Big Bend?
I've driven through. I've not been in not in the park.
So I used to go a couple times a year. We had some land out there, and it is the dumbest place to build a wall for, not just in the park, but for 100 miles in each direction out of the park, right? It's a desert landscape with mountain ranges. And, where they were doing the work, the Santa Elena Canyon and the Chisos Mountains, it's a 1,500-foot sheer rock cliff, and it is a beautiful park. It's like, I think Texas should be very, very proud of that park. I think it's underappreciated and underrated. So, the only thing that I would say is I don't think that it was like Abbott can step in and be a hero, because it's too negative. The press is too negative leading up to him being that hero. Everyone was like, bro, you're buddies with Trump. You could have stopped this months ago.
Yeah, but dude, Republicans are his entire campaign right now is this. His entire campaign is campaigning on shit that he caused, like problems he caused. He's campaigning on fixing public schools, and he was the one that advocated for the voucher program that dismantled all of our public schools and has shut down, I think, 144 of them, and pushed more teachers out of the public schooling system than I think ever before in Texas. And then I'm sure he's going to start campaigning on, reinstating THC, like he wasn't the part of doing it. And then the data centers. Dude, I just saw an article where 2 people in Texas have been arrested for posting videos on Facebook about the water in their towns as a result of data centers coming in. And they're literally turning on the water and it's turning brown. And these things aren't getting enough attention, but they are, because of the NDAs and I guess the legalities of everything that's going on with all this. There's these people are getting arrested for speaking out against it, which is complete horseshit. But that's what the only thing he's got is, I'm going to focus on trans kids, slashing property taxes, and campaigning on fixing problems I created.
What I broke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my thought with the Big Bend, my conspiracy thought on the Big Bend thing is it provided cover for Trump to lift protections in 50 million square miles of other national parks or whatever the huge number is that
Yeah.
like a day after they stopped the Big Bend stuff, he just eviscerated protections for like 30% of the United States national parks. And look, our national parks, those wilderness areas, they are a national jewel. They should be preserved. They're incredible. Every single one is beautiful and different in its own right, and they're wildlife habitats, and everybody from across the spectrum loves them. They are really, really a part, an incredible part of living in this country, and they should be preserved and protected.
Yeah. I think almost everybody in the country feels that way, but except for oil executives and tech company executives, because they want the minerals, they want the land for data centers, and they want the oil. So, fuck all of them. So, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about flock cameras too, because flock cameras are finally starting to, well, not finally, like there's been this kind of steady increase of pushback, but now the pushback is getting hilarious and it's all over the internet. So I wanted to play this clip real quick and get your reactions to it.
Wild story tonight where it appears nearly 20,000 people have vouched for the whereabouts of a man accused of destroying flock cameras in West Virginia. Thousands of people have publicly said they were with or saw 20-year-old Wesley Jackson during the time he was accused of the crime, with comments such as, "Couldn't be him. He was helping me replace the roof on a homeless shelter. And I saw him serving at a soup kitchen at the time of the incident." He has pleaded not guilty to the crimes against him.
I saw that. I saw that story. It's an incredible story.
This is I am when the public gets together on something that we are all like, when it's like a bipartisan pushback, we are fucking epic at at doing things. Like, I love it. I love how many people came to the table, and I love all of the videos of people cutting these things down. I love that they're exposing all of the other companies that are doing this. Every single one of these companies is backed by big tech. Like, they all have, it's the Peter Tills, it's the same fucking billionaire class that we're all raging against at the moment. And so it's good to see that people are finally coming to terms with, we don't want to see this.
We talked about this story a couple weeks ago. It was a police officer in Florida who was on set with, I guess, some actress on a show that's on Apple TV Plus, and, wanted to hook up with her. So he put her license plate into license plate readers, which include flock cameras, so that he would get real-time notifications when she was going past them. And he just absolutely started to stalk her, right? At one point, they show a video from his dash cam where he jumps into oncoming traffic to pass a truck and get behind her and pull her over. Like, he almost causes a head-on collision to pull her over. And they're talking to her. They show the investigator who was talking to the woman, and the investigator's describing all the stuff that this guy did. And the woman's like, "Oh my God." Right. And it's just disgusting. And then the fucking investigator goes, "We know you have a decent social media profile, but if you could refrain from posting about this, at least until I finish my investigation." And then they arrest the guy, and she's, the same investigator's talking to the cop, and she's like, "No, don't worry, buddy. This will be just like a speed bump. Don't worry about it." It's like every terrible thing about a police state is in that one video. And it's like, sometimes we have to refer to the police as agents of the state, because they are. Right? It's not an inaccurate or hyperbolic phrase, but it does maybe make us think about, like, wait, who are some of these people? Some of them are good and do a good job, and, police force, we need police. It's not like a defund the police thing. But man, the deference they receive sometimes, not good.
No, and it feeds into this whole manosphere bullshit. Like, if I had to guess, that cop is probably heavily in the manosphere. Wouldn't be surprised if he has an Andrew Tate poster hanging up on his wall in his one-bedroom apartment somewhere. But, like, I see this crap at the gym all the time because of, my wife is a I would say she's a 10 out of 10 on the look scale. And when we go to the gym in the morning, if she makes eye contact with another dude, there is a 99% chance that that guy is going to try to talk to her. Like, always. She can't be just a friendly human being without it being misconstrued into like, this dude wants, or like, this chick wants me. She needs me to talk to her, like whatever. Dudes will jump through hoops in their heads with stories about, you know, what a woman wants if they can, if the narrative fits whatever thing they're going through. So it's just, none of this shit shocks me. But when you give somebody that's that insecure that much power, you know, this is what you get. You get a bunch of.
And what's his thought process, right? Like, oh, hey, if I stalk this woman and, you know, tell her I wish your boyfriend was in the car so I could give him a hard time, she's going to jump into bed with me? Is that the connection that's being made here? It's but yeah.
It's probably a bunch of bad advice from dudes that are terrible with women. I'm gonna guess that he's been following some YouTubers that are like, this is a great way to get women to like you. And then the worst part is this probably turns into some hatred for women because it's her fault that she didn't respond the way he wanted her to. So, but that's the world we live in. I wanted to let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the Navy, because we see Pete Hegseth is starting to get rumored as potentially a GOP candidate for president. Meanwhile, we have a bunch of sailors that are like, I would rather be dead than on this ship. So
literally.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, Hegseth, he's in Iowa. I mean, maybe he's not anymore, but he was certainly in Iowa over the last weekend, couple days. And that is traditionally where you go to the Iowa State Fair, dip your toes into the presidential waters for a little bit. So yeah, certainly he's thinking about it. But yeah, this story coming off of the Abraham Lincoln, and I think, you know, there was another naval destroyer that some pictures about the conditions on board came out, is really amazing, right? Where at least one sailor has tried to kill himself by jumping off of the ship. He was rescued. So the Abraham Lincoln has been at sea now for 258 days or something like that. It's the longest continuous deployment since World War II outside of COVID. And I think in COVID, there were still either port calls or resupply missions, which they haven't had. For context, I don't think there have been 254 days this year, or 255 days this year. I think this ship has been out for the entirety of 2026 without restocking, without a port of call. So they're out of food. The women don't have feminine products that they need. The bathrooms are backing up, and they're not in a passive, like in COVID, they were on the ship because they didn't want them to come on land for COVID precautionary reasons. These guys are in an active war zone. These guys have run like 10,000 different missions off of that ship, right? They're working all the time. And, you know, now the families are furious. You had 200 families yelling at the Navy admirals in San Diego. The pictures are coming out through social media. And Trump's like, nope, the deployment isn't long enough. They should be out there for longer. And Hegseth is like, yeah, well, I think I'd make a good president. And, you know, when I think about the MAGA people and the Trump supporters on this, like, you can agree with the war in Iran. Like, okay, you might somehow think this is a good idea, but how can you make the argument that these people are good at their job, that they're doing a good job on a very fundamental, basic level? You have sailors, you have volunteer people, you know, people who voluntarily joined. They knew what they were getting into, right? Who have now been treated so poorly that they've decided death is a better option than continued service on the ship. It's an amazing story that I don't think is actually getting enough play.
Yeah, it leads itself to a bigger question too, because when you talk about like the nobility of our military, right, to protect and serve the people, like, we've had all of this respect for the military forever, and our veterans, like, there's a reason why we have different programs and different things to support them, even though we do a fucking terrible job once they get back. But all of that to say is that there is like the aura of what it means to be in the military, I feel like is being lost because we, Iraq and Afghanistan started this, and people coming back off of multiple tours and being like, what the fuck are we doing over there? Like, we don't even know our purpose. And are we actually fighting for something that is right, or not? Because when you're fighting to serve and save and help people, the fight means something. When you're fighting for oil executives to get more money or corruption, like it starts to, like, the meaning behind it is lost. And I think that, when you see guys trying to hurl themselves overboard, it probably means they feel like they don't have a lot of purpose for being where they're at, and they're there for way too long of a period of time. And like this concerns me in general about the future of our military, like that. If it continues to get used like this, I mean, I don't know that people will be interested in it ever. Like,
Well, especially if these are the conditions that
yeah,
they might have to go serve in, right? Like, I think that's exactly right. The nobleness of the cause has certainly diminished. If someone's 20 years old in 2026 and they're about to vote in their first election, they've lived through, they were born in 2005. They were born in the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, and now, we're in a stupid Iran war. There's just been continuous wars that seem to make no sense while services and conditions here get worse. They're looking at this going, wow, I don't agree with the cause, but you can still say that's not the fault of the people on the ship. Right. Like,
right.
there are plenty of reasons to join the military. Right. One is, flag waving, boot stomping America. We love it. Another one is there are a lot of opportunities. You learn skills, you learn technology, you get the GI Bill, you can go to college, you can get a leg up in your life. You can take your family and raise them up a social level. It might be the easiest way to do that these days. And now, and that should be supported. That should be encouraged always. But now we can't even support them while they're out fighting the war that nobody wants fought. We can't even support them and give them livable conditions, in the most literal sense, livable conditions. And it's the flag waving party, the support the military above all party that's doing this. And when asked about it, they're saying, no, effectively, these people should stop whining, serve for longer.
Yeah. And we have way too much access to information now. Like, there is people can call bullshit on this stuff way too easily. And furthermore, like, that after the fact, there's going to be videos and things that come out about this that show the reality of what we're doing, which I think is going to further the cause of making the military even less interesting, and also potentially push. The scarier thing about that is that the less and less people that are involved in the military, the more and more they're going to start relying on advanced weapons, AI, and robotics, which is also terrifying because that's something that could potentially kill all of us with and has no it has no conscience about doing it.
And as the whole thing becomes politicized, which it invariably does, and people in the center of the spectrum lose interest in serving in the military, you're just going to have a more and more extreme version of individuals sign up for the military. And you're going to, you might wind up with a kind of ICE situation where you have just completely unqualified people. I read a survey that said that of 183 ICE agents, ICE and CBP agents that had criminal convictions this year, 151 of those were child or sexual abuse. The bar is so low now for who they'll take into those positions. If that spreads over to the military, it's a real problem.
Yeah, it's a huge freaking problem. So, we could have bigger problems in the future if we don't start codifying some norms. And so we are going to kind of start this loose series of just talking in general about what things as we approach the primaries in November, what things do we want candidates talking about, and what is the purpose of all of this? Because if we're talking about real change has to come from people that are getting into politics to serve their constituents. We need people that actually care about other people more than lining their pockets and becoming famous. And we've created a situation where it's harder and harder to incentivize somebody to live on a meager salary and take the shitstorm that politics offers. So with that being the case, there's still good people out there fighting and running, and we need those people to get in, which brings us to the topic of today, which is going to just be elections. And so we've talked about this in general, but I wanted to read this article from Reuters real quick about last week, and that kind of launch us into our conversation. The Trump administration's streak of courtroom defeats in its efforts to obtain state voter rolls reached 21 this year when a judge ruled this week that the states are not required to share their records with the federal government. With the president's Republicans defending him, slim minorities in both Congress and the House, his administration has mounted an aggressive effort to expand federal oversight of elections ahead of the November 3rd primaries or midterms. So what would be the purpose, in general, what would be the purpose of the federal government getting involved in state elections? Like, what's the draw to this at the moment?
Well, so before I answer that, it's up to 23. It's 0 for 23 now.
Oh, for
2 more
23.
states came down this week.
Yeah, that article was updated last week. So that means 2 more in the last week have said no. Great.
Yep. The purpose is voter suppression. The purpose is to know who is against you, who is for you. The purpose is, there's myriad purposes depending on what the data shows. Like you can learn, okay, these areas vote against me. We're going to shut down voting centers, or we're going to put ICE patrols at these places, or we're just going to monitor the social media of some of these people and fucking arrest them if we don't like what they're saying. It is, elections in this country work, first of all, right? They have worked. The 2000 election that Trump talks about all the time, his own election chief said it was the most safe and secure election in history. Large-scale voter fraud, medium-scale voter fraud, small-scale voter fraud does not exist in this country. That is empirically true. The Heritage Foundation did a study. They found something like 12 prosecutable cases of illegal immigrants voting in something like 20 years. That's billions of votes cast. They found 12 cases. So local control of elections, which we have now, works. But if you are the party in power, you don't want that. You want to control the elections. You want to rig the game. And the first thing that I think you would go after to do that is, hey, who's on the rolls there? Who's voting? Who lives in the state? Can we find a way to kick them off the rolls? Can we threaten the state with funding? Can we go after them on an individual level, on a county level? There is nothing positive or vote enhancing about our national government, and I would feel this way if it was the Democrats, about our federal government seeking state-level voting data. It simply doesn't belong to them, and it never has. So, I don't think we know exactly what they would do with it. They've never said. They justify it by saying, well, we're trying to root out voter fraud. We're trying to find out how many people, are illegally registered to vote. And even that, is like, people don't follow that up with the distinction that voter registration inaccuracy is not the same as voter inaccuracy, right? If I die, there's going to be some amount of time while my name is still on the rolls, right? And then people can look at it and be like, that's a dead guy on the voter rolls. Yeah, no shit, because it takes time for this shit to come out. If, my daughter moved, she wasn't registered in Texas, but had she been registered in Texas until she re-registers, somebody could say, well, she doesn't live there. Yeah, but she also doesn't vote here, right? If she comes back and votes and can show residency, then she's able to vote here, right? If she votes here, but she resides somewhere else, then you can say that's an issue. But that's what they're looking for. They're just looking for anything they can do to suppress vote to scare people out of voting, to make voting more difficult and more scary. So it's by far, I think, the most reassuring thing that I've seen this year is that 0 for 23 number.
Yeah. This is such a critical aspect for me because this is the top of the pyramid. Like, if we cannot elect new blood into office and we cannot throw people out and get people out that don't serve our interests anymore, then we've lost the country. Like, that is essentially, it's gone. So everything starts for me with elections. It is the top of the pyramid. And there's a couple things that I see going on with these attacks. And one, you're correct. The information around election fraud and all of this stuff, it blows my mind. And it's a point that's been hammered home over the years, is if there was large scale election fraud from the Democrats or illegals, how in God's name would everything be Republicans right now? Like, there's no way. Like, we would have used election fraud to keep him from taking office, which is what everybody would have fought against. So, like, that in and of itself is just complete horseshit to me. But two, like,
yeah, you'll never convince me that we rigged the 2020 election for Joe Biden, but didn't get Susan Collins out of there.
Yeah, correct. There's so many inconsistencies with that argument that logically it can be debunked in like 10 seconds. Just be like, yeah, on both sides, right? Like, why, if elections don't make sense all of the time, and especially even after polling information, where half the time we're like, we just talked about this a couple of weeks ago with El Sayed and Haley Stevens, like it looked like he was polling by like 14 points and then wins by like a point or less. And, we don't actually know the scale, I think, of what's going on, but I do think we can honestly say that if there is voter fraud going on, it's currently not widespread. And unless I see valid information to convince me otherwise, like great journalism around, voting machines being rigged or something like that, like, I don't want to hear anything else about it. But I think the bigger concern for me around this is just that the strategy of planting these seeds that voting isn't secure is the thing that we have to fight against. And I think part of the reason, like, we started a podcast and that people should be talking about this stuff and trying to get their voices out there is that this is the point, is they're going to lie through their teeth over and over again until November 3rd to try and make you believe that everything is rigged. And they've already started it. They've already started the True Social posts and the misinformation about like, this can't be real. They if they win, it's, he's already started attacking Detroit, Michigan, and claiming that they have the most fraud in the history of fraud when it comes to voter rolls and things like that. And they're going to push this information until it sticks. And that's been Trump's that's been his gold standard for getting shit done. It's just like, repeat the lie enough times and then people believe it.
Yeah, I think, we've talked about this before, and one of the things that I said, and I still believe, is I think that there's been enough organizations out there speaking very openly about the risk to elections and what to look out for, that it's harder to pull a fast one if everybody's looking for the fast one, right? If you're sitting there looking for a fastball down the middle, it's harder to get the fastball by you. So I think that's been reassuring, but it's not bulletproof, right? So we talked about like what are things that can be codified, what can be done, what are norms, and to me the thing that jumps out, or one thing that jumps out, is with mail-in voting, because that's the one place where it's like, they can fuck with some stuff with the mail. Right? They've been challenging for a long time now the idea that a ballot stamped on election day but received at the election office after election day, that is acceptable. It, I believe, remains acceptable, but it's getting closer. I think that was, I don't think the Supreme Court fucked that one up. I have to remember that. usually don't forget that stuff. But like that's a big one. But then also like what is the responsibility of the post office to postmark that mail on that day? There is none, right? They could postmark it the next day and then your vote doesn't count. So, and the post office is this intersection of federal involvement to an otherwise local process, right? If you're going to mail your ballot, and there are plenty of states that have almost exclusive mail-in voting, and certainly every state allows mail-in voting in some cases, right? So if you're going to mail your ballot, then I believe there should be some rules, some codified laws directing the post office what to be done. The post office has to stay open till 9 o'clock on election day, let's say, right? To allow people to get home from work, write out a ballot, and go cast it. We do it on tax day. If we can do it for people paying their taxes, I feel like we can do it for people mailing in a vote. And they have to postmark that, and maybe they have to give you a receipt showing that you handed over your ballot to a post office official on that day. So if you feel like your vote wasn't counted, and there's a tracking number on that, and you can track your vote to see if it was counted, which exists already, you can prove that I dropped this off on time, and you can hold postmaster generals and post office employees liable for that, criminally liable, civilly liable, whatever, put penalties in to make sure that this intermediary, which is controlled by the federal government, doesn't get involved in fucking up the local government process. So that's one place that I think that it makes total sense for federal legislation to exist. It doesn't control an election in any way. If it's just a blanket law saying on election day of each year, post offices must stay open until 7, 8, 9 o'clock, whatever. Anybody dropping off a ballot within 5 days of the election, must receive a receipt with a tracking number, to indicate that they can hold to prove that they cast that vote. These are things that seem like they would only enhance the security of an election to me and are nonpartisan.
Yeah, 1,000%. The mail-in voting, and I've mailed in when I was in California.
So is Donald Trump.
Yeah, correct.
Third time. He voted in the Florida primary by mail this year.
Which there's so many reasons why mail-in voting is important for all of the people, to be honest, I feel like it actually hurts Republicans more to cancel it, because I'm going to guess usually the older crowd, the crowd that votes is older Republicans. And it could mess some stuff up in places like California and New York, because population density, right? Like there's one of the reasons why mail-in voting is so big in California is just getting anywhere and doing anything is a giant pain in the ass. So, getting into a Whole Foods parking lot and getting out takes 2 hours, standing in line to vote is going to take you maybe a week. So but
that's why they have those ballot boxes, right? And you see the ballot harvesting claims, like, Utah votes by mail, like 96% of their votes are cast by mail. I don't see the Republicans claiming that Utah's elections are rife with fraud, right? So it's obviously like the lie gets ripped apart right there to me, because it's like, no, nobody's saying that Democrats are winning Utah. Come on, right? And they're all voting by mail. But like, you always
we're going to start saying it. We're saying it now.
Yeah,
Democrats are winning Utah.
So you have these ballot boxes where where people can drive by, and they'll be just like on a corner, and it's a secure box, and they come by once, twice a day, and they collect the ballots. And that is just this incredible red flag to the, big steel people, to the election fraud people. Well, I don't know. Did you ever hear about this movie 2,000 Mules?
No.
So Dinesh D'Souza, who's like this crackpot right-wing nut job social media person with a decent following, he did this movie after the 2020 election called 2,000 Mules, where he basically says that he's blowing the lid off voter fraud, and he's following these people who are collecting the ballots at these ballot boxes and bringing them in, and he's showing like, why are people coming to this, why is the same guy coming to this one ballot box 3 times a day? It's like, it's his fucking job. So in Georgia, a guy that D'Souza was profiling and kind of, in a shitty way, sued him for defamation, right? And just this week, Dinesh D'Souza paid it out on the eve of trial. He was like, I'm not going to go to trial. How about I just give you a bunch of money and we make this go away? So
Shocker.
yeah, like shocker, right? So yeah, these things exist. Mail-in voting, ballot harvesting boxes, right? These things exist to make it easier for people to vote because it is difficult. We don't have a national holiday for election day, right? I don't know what California's early voting policies are, but in New York they sucked. Like in Texas they're decent, in Georgia they're decent, right? So it's not always the case that you can vote early, and it's not hard to find people who work an hourly job whose job is not going to let them off so they can go and vote. Wait 2 hours online to vote. So these things exist to improve democracy.
Correct. And this is a foundational principle of democracy. So there needs to be laws in place around this stuff. And it's going to be something I'm paying attention to our next president talking about. Election day should be a holiday. Everybody should have the day off. Everybody should have equal access to being able to vote. If we're going to force voting in person, which, to be honest, I go back and forth on whether we should ever be able to vote on a phone or a device or not, just because there's something about being like when we're talking about voicing our opinions and through the political realm and advocacy, there's part of me, and maybe this will be old school, is like, yeah, you need to show up for that. Like, this should mean enough to you to like go and write somebody's name or fill out a ballot and drop it in a box. It should, if it takes an hour out of your day, it's an hour that was worth it. It should take thought. It shouldn't be just like a few clicks of a button on your phone. That's my personal opinion.
Unless it takes 6 hours.
Unless it takes 6 hours, correct. And there should be laws around making voting easier. Like if there was going to be any federal laws around passed, it should be in support of expanding voting. And the thing that concerns me about a lot of like what we were just talking about is just the people that get shit on the most are volunteers. Like it's not like these people are getting paid a bunch of money to run our elections. Most of the people that are doing this are volunteers and are doing it because they're retired or they just care. And so they're there. And which to me is probably one of the easier things to potentially manipulate, the fact that it's not, that it is, well, and maybe you could make an argument against that, but like all of the nonsense around, widespread fraud. I'm just like, man, and then people attacking voting stations and potentially, threatening people as they're going to the box. Like those are the kinds of things that I think we need to continue to put laws in place to protect when we're talking about election security. Like that's my opinion on all this stuff. And I'm paying attention to it. Like as candidates are speaking, like this is the kind of shit I want to hear. Like, yeah, like everything should be expanding accessibility and rights so more voices are heard and it's easier for people to get out and make their voice heard if it matters to them.
It should be as easy as buying a gun.
Yeah. Correct. That's as accurate of a statement as you can make right there. I can go to Cabela's right now and come home with one, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe even Walmart sells them, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
the biggest arms dealer in our country. Is there any laws that you would see passed as far as just general elections? We'll get into some deeper stuff in the coming weeks about this stuff. I'd like to revisit gerrymandering and potentially some other things around elections. But in general, outside of based on the conversation we had, is there anything specific you'd like to see passed?
No, I mean, for today, the specific one would be something around that mail-in voting like I just described. But largely, I agree with you. I think laws regarding voting should exist to make voting easier, not more difficult. It's the most fundamental right to a democracy.
Yeah. And if you want to pass a voter ID law, I'm not against a voter ID law if it's free and people and you're giving people early access to it, and it's something that actually builds more confidence in voting, cool. If it's if something came about like that, I would not necessarily be against it, as long as it was free, quickly accessible, and it made things better, not worse.
Hard disagree.
Hard disagree? No?
Hard disagree.
Why?
Voter fraud's not a problem. Like I described before, voter ID is a solution in search of a problem. The point of a voter ID law, no matter how free and easy you make it, you are layering a barrier on top of voting. You have to have the ID, right? That's a thing that you have to have that you didn't used to have to have. It's a requirement that didn't used to exist. No matter how easy you make it, if you tattoo it on someone's fucking forehead, you're still making it more difficult to vote. It's just what you're just describing is incrementalism when it comes to how difficult it's made. But ultimately, the idea of voter ID is to prevent voter fraud. You need voter ID if there's voter fraud. There's no voter fraud. So why do we need to make anything regarding voting more difficult if there's no fraud? It doesn't solve an existing problem. So no, hard against it.
I guess I just haven't lived in a state where it wasn't required anyway. Because like Texas, we have to have it.
I didn't need it in New York.
Yeah, so like I've always had to do it, so it's never been an issue. I mean, we could also just require to get people to get barcodes tattooed on their necks, and then we get scanned when we as a baby.
Well, you know. So I could. I know it's a joke, right? So haha. But you know why isn't that a
Clearly not
why isn't that a dystopian future, right? Like we institute voter ID and people say, you know what, it's not working. People in rural areas aren't getting it, or there's a lag between when somebody becomes a citizen or gets out of jail and they don't get it. And then people start to be like, well, you know what, when you become a citizen or when you get out of jail, we'll just tattoo a barcode on you so that all your rights are preserved and you can go and vote that day. If you get out of jail on November 2nd, you can go vote on November 3rd. And then there'll be people who are like, yeah, that's a good idea, right? When it's not at all a good idea, right? So when you add the appeal of voter ID and why it's such a dangerous idea to me is because it is so logically appealing, right? Like this is a basic right. We don't want fraud in our elections. We need to be able to trust our elections. But that's all a lie. That whole conversation, that whole point is a lie because you can trust our elections. Our elections are safe and secure. There is no voter fraud. So the minute you start to ignore that very fundamental fact in favor of additional restriction, all you're doing is raising the bar for the next restriction. Yeah. So no, I have no sense of humor about this shit, Derek.
Apparently, I'm sorry. I'm starting to see that. I just think the Pandora's box has been opened on this topic a little bit, and there's been enough talk about it now and enough going on that at some point, even though I 1,000% agree with the sentiment, you know, you're going to have half the country now that believes that everything they're not secure and that illegals are voting and all of that. And I think at some point, as shitty as it is, like there may be a situation where, yeah, like again, like I'm for a solution that makes it that expands the rights of voting and allows people to vote very easily. I just don't know what that looks like. And, you know, I hope it doesn't necessarily come to that. But, dude, we're also living in a time where billionaires run our country. And there is a potential scenario where billionaires try to find ways to actually commit voter fraud, to win elections, to get their legislative agendas passed. Like these guys have like, you know, these data centers and all this shit going on in Texas. I mean, like the future of these companies is largely going to be decided on the will of the people who are fighting to prevent these data centers from going in to their places, because the only way their investment, their billions slash trillions of dollars worth of investment is worth it is if they can actually go through and build the infrastructure. None of the AI stuff works without the data centers. So,
well, Sergey Brin has spent $100 million of his own money fighting the wealth tax proposal in California, which to me kind of proves the need for the wealth tax proposal in California. But, I think my last point on this would be the reason that I have no sense of humor about this is because I think the willingness to say this is something like voter ID is a logically acceptable thing that can just be palliative in nature, and we put it on and now we feel our elections are secure. That's what they want. It's the easy sell, and you have to fight that sell. You cannot give an inch on this, not an inch, because the whole premise is not flawed. It's untrue. The premise behind the voter ID movement is untrue. So to accept the idea of voter ID at all is to allow that untrue premise to take root. To accept the idea that the 2020 election was stolen is to allow distrust in our elections, right? There are certain things where when the premise itself is the lie, it doesn't matter to me beyond that. We cannot stop talking about the fact that the premise itself is the lie, and the premise here is the lie. So to me, it's like, no, we don't need it because it's not a problem. We don't need the solution. Your solution might be great. There might be a great solution to voter ID if voter fraud was a problem, but it's not a problem. So I don't trust any of the solutions, because any solution, by definition, is a layer of difficulty on top of the right that should be the easiest to exercise.
Point heard. And I will think about it for a week and then potentially fight you again on it next week. So we'll see how that goes.
Love it. Love it.
Who we telling to shut the fuck up today? It better not be me because of my voter fraud.
No, it might be me. When you hear what this one is, it might be me. I went to the bank this morning and I just had to make a deposit, right? And because it was cash, I didn't want to do it through the thing. I didn't have a deposit slip. I didn't want to do it through the drive-through. And I go in the bank and there's like 4 desk staff, and then at the end of the room, the teller. And every single one of them got up and was like, "Good morning, sir. Hi, how are you? Welcome in. How can we help you today?" Every one of them. And then I get to the end and the teller's like, "How are you today? How can we help you today? Are you having a good day? What's your morning been like so far? How's your summer?" And I'm just like, shut the fuck up and just process my deposit. I don't want to make small talk at all. You're all very nice, right? This is why it's probably me that should shut the fuck up, right? None of these people are offensive, except that someone up the corporate ladder was like, you have to bombard every person that comes in this branch with just sugary sweetness. And they're all like, I got to keep my job, so I got to be super nice. And no one ever comes in here. 3 people a day walk in. And then I couldn't be a complete dick, so now I'm in a whole conversation with the teller while she's doing the deposit about I don't even know what. And then on the way back out, same thing, 4 people "Thank you for coming. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for coming. Are you going to have a good day? What are you going to do today?" It's I'm going to get in my fucking car and leave and take deposit slips with me so that I can go through the fucking drive-through next time and not talk to anybody. Please provide the service that I need. I'm never going to see you again. The turnover in that bank is every month, the whole staff turns over. And as I'm standing at the teller, I'm like, this is going to be my shut the fuck up segment. And it might be me who's the dick.
I'm going to say with this one, I feel a little bit seen as of our conversation yesterday. Because yesterday when we hung up, I felt a little bad because I compared you to my angry Jewish buddy in California, and you're like, what are you saying? And I was like, I mean, sometimes I can see it.
Yeah, no, sometimes, yeah. Sure. There's a Seinfeld episode where Kramer walks into a bank and everybody says, they go, "Hey, hi, how are you? ho there, right? And then there's a sign that says, if we don't say hello, you get $5. So Kramer comes in again. The next he sees a sign and he goes back. They do a bit about it in the apartment and he goes back the next day and the same thing. Everybody greets him a different way. And he's like, you guys owe me $5. Right. And they have a whole meeting and they settle on like, you got a greeting that starts with an H. How about a toaster? Right. But as I'm leaving and they're all like, have a great day. I hope you drive safely. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hope your summer's going well. I'm just like, no, God, don't you have work to do? Like, look at your computer screen. So
at least
anyway.
pretend like you're doing something. Well,
Yeah.
to all those bank tellers out there that are being way too friendly to somebody that's a little bit grumpy, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Or me. God,
Or
the way you
Ellen.
just said that, I was like, yeah, clearly me. But nah, fuck it. I said what I said.
I just wanted to nail the point home. So
What's the Jewish guy have? What's the Jewish have to do with it anyway?
I don't know. If he wasn't Jewish, then I would describe him as like a whatever white guy, or if it was a black friend, I'd probably ask. It was a describing factor. All right. I'm sorry. Maybe I should leave the Jewish part out of it. We talk a lot about. I talk more about Jewish people than I ever have before in my life because of our conversations.
Good.
So,
That's my goal.
I feel maybe a little more at liberty than I should to talk about Jewish people. But
also, we almost made it through an entire podcast without that coming up, and then I had to fuck it up.
Nah, I like it. So, well, what are we talking about next week?
We should, if we can remember, we should hit the Florida primaries that happened yesterday because they were fucking nutso.
That's right. Yes, we will. We'll include a little bit of that in there as well, and then continue our series on codifying norms. So
we can talk basically primary, the norms around primaries and what the primary system, the pluses and minuses of it in general.
I like where your head's at. Let's do it. Well, for anybody that made it this far into the podcast, that isn't sleeping or put us on mute. See you next week.
See you next week.